Welcome to another episode of The Neophytes, a special series within the Never Close the Inquiry podcast, wherein my good friend Thomas Maybe and I sit down and talk about current issues in politics. We are not experts, neither of us, and that's kind of the whole point. If we repeated our conversation today with the benefit of more time to think things through, it would be different, maybe in small ways and maybe in big ways. The message we're trying to convey is that it's okay not to know. It's okay to keep learning, and it's okay to change your mind. In fact, it's probably good. The fact that you believed something before doesn't mean that when presented with new information or upon reconsideration, you're still locked into that prior view. It's okay, in other words, to never close the inquiry. Welcome back to another episode of the Neophytes. Tonight, we are going to talk about the legacy of the late Senator Lindsey Graham, who passed away this last weekend. That's actually going to be one of the first parts of the podcast. We're going to go to our conspiracy correspondent, Thomas Maybe, for Reddit's thoughts on what caused his untimely passing. But the medical explanation, as has been presented, is that it was like a something akin to a heart attack, kind of a hole in the aorta or something.
It was an aortic burst or something.
An aortic burst. Like Okay. But before we move on, or before we get going, let us have a quick word for our sponsors. We are sponsored, as always, of course, by Dr. Pepper and its various subsidiaries. I'm not personally imbibing right now. Channing is leaning in. We are again recording.
I'm not sleeping tonight, but for you, Dr. Pepper,
our new recording time is generally Tuesday evening, which means that it is medically not the best time to consume caffeine. But Channing, for the sake of our sponsor, spits in the face of medical science and his own body.
I just love Dr. Pepper so much that I pray for a day that they will sponsor this, and I will sacrifice one night of sleep every week to show them how dedicated I am.
And I am willing to sacrifice one night of your sleep per week as well.
Yep.
So
the sacrifice I'm willing to make.
Yes. Channeling Lord Farquaad. Some of you may die, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
Did you know that guy is based off a real life person?
John Lithgow or Lord Farquaad?
Lord Farquaad. Apparently, he's somebody's boss that pissed someone off, and then they made it look a little bit like him, but not all the way, to avoid lawsuits. And that's really funny.
That is hilarious.
Is this a Thomas Maybe Reddit conspiracy theory? Or is this
no? There's articles written about it, so whether or not that's true.
Oh, well, we know that must be true then.
I mean, Hagen writes articles, and we don't know if those are true.
Yeah.
So,
anything
that's on the internet these days.
Anything that's on the internet. That's a good point. I have the power to shape public thought.
Yeah, you can make your own reality.
Don't act like you haven't been abusing it this whole time.
Be the change you want to see in the world.
Yeah. Okay. Write the change I want to see in the world. Interesting. Okay.
Have you seen did you see the commercial for Digger?
Yes, I did. I did.
You might have a control history, but you can, you can't control the future, but you can control the narrative.
There you go. Yeah. Well, oh gosh. Anyway. Okay. Speaking of this, okay. So the focus of today's podcast. Oh yeah. Anyway, that looks it's Digger, starring Tom Cruise, directed by Alejandro Iñárritu.
Anyways,
comes out October 2nd, I think. Anyway, trailer dropped online today, so naturally we watched it with great enthusiasm.
We is an interesting word there.
Okay, me and Channing, the royal we. But okay, so back to the topic du jour. Senator Lindsey Graham passed away over the weekend. It has given rise to certain conspiracy theories because he did pass away very suddenly. The initial press release was that he had died after a sudden and brief illness. but I think it was exceptionally brief. It was,
a sudden and brief illness was all of 30 seconds having a heart attack.
Yeah, I think he had a medical event and died. But given his position and the fact that he had just returned from Ukraine and had been working up basically until his death, it has given rise to certain conspiracies, for which we turn to our conspiracy correspondent, Thomas Maybe. So what is Reddit saying?
So I think the most interesting thing I read about this today was Trump's statement on it, where apparently the FBI is investigating it.
Sure.
And Trump was like, this seems like a waste of time. Probably shouldn't do that. And when I read it, I was like, either he's having like a really clear moment of like a good take where it's like, maybe there's nothing to do with this, or it sounds like he's an evil president that's saying like, don't look, don't look any further. Just similar to like the Epstein style or Epstein files. So like, there's some conspiracies out there, but most of the comments I've read have been very like, this just seems like someone just dying of an unfortunate heart attack.
Well, the thing is, so he had just returned from the Ukraine. Senator Graham has long been a notorious hawk, a big supporter, very, very pro intervention, very comfortable using the military. Intervention was a long time, very close friend of late Senator John McCain, and a big supporter of Ukraine, who has, I think, played an important role in this administration in keeping them invested in Ukraine, despite I think certain members of the administration being less inclined to do that, and maybe more inclined to deal more favorably with Russia. So to the extent he would be a target of a foreign power, it would be of Russia, presumably. But he did not just return from Russia.
I mean, Iran.
Yeah, sure. Well, yeah, Iran. Yeah. Okay. Yes, absolutely. But yeah, okay. I mean, there are a couple. Yeah, okay. There are
Venezuela, possibly.
Well, I have a
Venezuela
question.
might be not super heavy.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
So was you mentioned John McCain? Was he super hawkish too?
Yes.
Okay, because I don't remember.
King of the modern hawks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. I kind of liked him. That's too bad.
Well,
I mean, people can argue one way or the other.
I liked him. I liked his character, and he seemed like an actual, genuine American citizen, and like he actually believed. And
do you think that is you can't reconcile that?
No,
with being a hawk?
no.
Okay.
It just makes me like him less. It's not like it's just like
because you are personally dovish.
First off, let's define what do you mean when you say hawk?
Oh, sure. So hawks. We're talking foreign policy, and we're talking generally use of the military.
So it's intervention, right?
They're
Hawks are those who are more comfortable with military intervention. Doves are those who are less comfortable with it.
Sure.
And it's a spectrum, so you don't there are a lot of people who might naturally be more inclined to stick with peace, maybe longer than is optimal, but who will eventually commit to war, and then that plenty of hawks are not going to necessarily just start bombing everybody. Although, maybe
there might be. I think one thing I do want to say real quick though is that for me personally, I think I am very grateful when there are both hawks and doves at the table, and talking, because I think every situation is unique, and I think if people are able to actually discourse appropriately and well about their different perspectives, I think that makes it so that there's a higher chance of the better outcome occurring. But anyways, because we've talked about Iran and how it's going last week, and in that case, were there enough people at the table, that people were listening to, that from both sides, right? Like, who, ultimately who made decisions?
Well, so two thoughts really quick, because I think you make a very good point. there have been periods in this nation's history when we probably tended too far in either direction. So I think in the lead up to World War II, because in large part of World War I and then the Great Depression, everything, we were in this kind of heavy isolationist period, and isolationism and doveness, whatever you would call it, the noun, are not necessarily the same thing, but they do tend to go hand in hand, at least in effect. And I think we were far too isolationist in the lead up to World War II, and we always think of ourselves, and I think it's for good reason, as the heroes of World War II. But we should remember that we joined
a little bit late.
We joined like 27 months after it started going, and 28 months after it had started, and a lot of soldiers, ultimate allies, had died before we joined in. And then there have also clearly been times where I think we were far too quick to get involved in foreign conflicts, and we've seen that happen.
Yeah, I mean, in a world where we can't trust people to be moderate, it's good to have.
Yeah, you want people of different opinions. And yeah. Another thing we should say about joining World War II late and then being quick to jump into these other conflicts, I think it's really hard to get war right. There's not like anything as momentous as beginning an armed conflict with another nation where a lot of people are going to die. It's never going to feel like a completely good thing. And it's hard to say there's like an optimal time to
I'm interested in your guys' opinion on this. So I remember growing up thinking that America just won every war. And now I feel like, since I've gotten older and I'm not reading elementary school textbooks about America, that more and more I'm thinking that a lot of our like declared victories in these wars they weren't as complete, and America hasn't. I feel like our track record is just going into other places and fighting in wars. We did accomplish things, but it wasn't like. I feel like when I was a kid, I just imagined us just being victorious all the time, like unconditionally. But
Channing, do you want to go first?
I'll go first. I'll go first. Okay, so I'm a huge. I am very. I read about the military a ton. I was in high school and I was reading books that were the collections of journals of generals and stuff in World War II and World War I. So like I have been like, I really find war fascinating because it's so rough. Like it's a terrible, terrible thing. And I'm fascinated by just so many aspects of it and how terrible it is. But I think my thoughts and feelings about that are there's really no such thing as complete and total victory unless you kind of obliterate someone else, which is like, because otherwise you deal with the consequences. And even then you're still going to deal with the consequences. Like there is no such thing as a clean war. And if you think that there was a clean war, that was because history softened the edges and portrayed it in a way, because there's a real cost every single time. There's a piece of you that does it gets costs. Like there's a cost is a piece of you, and all the other things that go with it. So I definitely think you're right that like there's lots of like it's always hurt to win, but I also disagree with you because there is a thing of winning and it not feeling great. And I think that's kind of in a place of what some of the other conflicts have been is the US has an amazing military, and like people do see us as this formidable, almost undefeatable force a lot of the time. And there's a good reason behind that. Are we undefeatable? No, we could be defeated.
I'm going to give a slightly different answer. I'm going to establish my own credibility. I also read a fair amount of military history. Currently reading a biography of Douglas MacArthur. So
I read. So, by the way, in my mind, when I was talking about reading in high school, I was thinking of a book of a collection of MacArthur's written stuff about his thing. That in my mind was what I was thinking of. I read.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, sorry.
Yeah,
that was Douglas in my
MacArthur,
mind.
Fascinating historical figure, fascinating American, who, just in brief, it was a prominent leader during World War I, and then held a number of important positions in the intervening years. Was in the Philippines when World War II began. Had actually, he was like the field marshal of the Philippine Army. Was briefly out of the American military, and then was taken back in and was commanding the forces in the Philippines, and then was kind of evacuated to Australia before the Philippines fell. The Philippines at that point were a U.S. territory still. And then he led, it is basically him and Nimitz commanding different, taking different parts of the Pacific sphere as they moved toward Japan. And then he was Supreme Allied Commander, General of the Army over there in Japan, and effectively acted as a benevolent dictator in Japan for the 5 or 6 or so years following the war. Fascinating guy, fascinating period of history. And so I would say that when the U.S. has waged total war, which I think it has done few times, it has done very, very well. I think World War I was a comprehensive victory. The outcome of that was not ideal because the Treaty of Versailles, hindsight's 2020. Then sight was pretty close to that. It was a very punitive treaty that eventually led to, it produced the conditions that eventually led to the rise of the Nazis. It pretty quickly led to the rise of the Nazis. Actually,
it was not very much. Like it's an incredibly short amount of time. Sorry.
It was really, really fast. That didn't work out well. But then World War II, Germany and Japan were defeated comprehensively, and then the U.S. I know less about what we did in Germany, and how that worked out, and that was a little more complicated because there was more like split authority with the Soviets, and obviously we entered the Cold War like pretty much immediately. But in Japan, we were effectively, like, MacArthur was effectively acting as the dictator of Japan, backing up everything the Japanese government was doing and dictating what they could do and what they had to do. And it really interesting. Like, he had, helped by the American lawyers, effectively gave Japan a new constitution. They heavily rewrote the old one, and Imperial Japan was no more, and became a liberal democracy. And anyway, fascinating period of history. But the point is, I think there have been a couple of times where we've waged total war and have won completely, and then have just basically been in charge. But to win total war, like waging total war, is a horrible thing. Like, we went in and we did some wonderful things in Japan, I think, following World War II, but we dropped 2 atomic bombs, and the number of it, it was a very violent total war. I use the word total a lot. I think
we carpet bombed Tokyo.
Oh yeah,
it was Tokyo,
yeah.
Right?
There was a lot of others. There were very few cities that were really standing. We burned a lot of cities effectively to the ground. Tokyo was, yeah. We basically,
for the record,
down
I just want to make sure we know about Vietnam and Korea. So
yeah, we do. Those are later.
We are still building up.
He's building up to it,
yeah.
Channing.
And well, again, I know.
I would consider those total war as well.
Would you?
There was a draft.
No. I don't think those are the same level. I think, well, Korea maybe not. Korea maybe that was
Vietnam.
Vietnam, I don't think was total war in the same way.
I mean,
maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, I'll agree with you that like we weren't like changing all of our factories to create bullets and everything. But that was also a world war. Total war doesn't have to be a world war, I don't think. But
no, but I think total war. That's a good point. I'm not sure how I define it. None of us served in the military.
I mean, they were drafting. That sounds like total war to me. Like you're literally conscripting troops because your military is like.
When I'm defining total war, I think the way I'm looking at it is more how we're approaching the actual fighting. Like, are we pulling any punches at all? And I think near the end of Japan, we were pulling 0 punches. I think
were we pulling punches in Vietnam? We did some pretty terrible stuff.
We did some pretty terrible stuff, but we weren't. Yeah, we did some terrible stuff, but we weren't.
We didn't drop a nuclear bomb.
We didn't nuke anybody.
But we did know at that point that it was a bad thing.
Yeah, it was the original Agent Orange.
Yeah, I was gonna say Agent Orange was a real bad one.
Well, actually, the second one right now.
Yeah. Okay.
That was a true joke.
Oh, right.
I agree with you though that I think. Look, you're right. There have been some black guys.
Let me. There have been black guys. Let me put it this way: if the U.S. goes in and does not care about international law and does not care at all about civilian casualties, the U.S. could have comprehensively won every war they fought in.
Every single one.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Every single one. Yep.
Yeah.
Because also one of the cool things, and I would just say this is something interesting because I'm a nerd. There's actually a couple infographics on YouTube that you can watch where people have shown how large different countries' militaries are. And it's really cool to go through the like little YouTube videos and they show infographics of like varying sizes. And there was a person who I watched and they had like, they had a video about troops, like actual like physical soldiers. And then they did another one on tanks and they did another one on aircraft. And it was really interesting at how they did this. And by and large, the United States Army is huge. And the biggest differentiator is that the United States has the most aircraft in the world by a substantial margin. I think it was like at the time when they did it, and this was right before the Russian war, like the Russia and Ukraine war.
Yeah.
I think the US had something like 2.5 times the aircraft of Russia, which was the second most aircraft in the world.
Nice.
So it was like a lot. And obviously Russia lost a lot of planes in this Ukrainian conflict.
Wait, you're kidding.
So like it's not even so it's like
Thanks
not even
to Lindsey
close
Graham. But getting back to Thomas's original question, I do think it's fair to say that there have been a lot of conflicts that have not gone 100% according to plan.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
Definitely.
Yeah, I think a number of soldiers, maybe our Secretary of War, Pete Hegseth, would argue that America has fought a lot of conflicts with one hand tied behind its back, and as such has struggled, or maybe like in Afghanistan and Iraq, the military part of it went pretty well, or the initial military part of it, like the large battle type stuff, but then
it's everything else
stuck.
How did Kuwait go
in like 93?
I'm pretty sure it went well.
I thought
because I
Desert
never
Storm?
really heard much about that.
The first Gulf War went I think went pretty well, relatively speaking.
Yeah.
Again, the extent of our studies doesn't.
Those ones too were pretty small in scope, though. Those were like secure these oil fields and hold out until a marauding force basically goes away, and then just let them know we'll be back if they try to make another move.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things to do is to completely derail whatever Hagen says the topic is for the podcast.
So anyway, back to Senator Lindsey Graham. So
Hawk.
Yeah, Hawk. But part of the reason to talk about Senator Graham, and I think there are plenty of congressmen, who even upon a sudden passing, we would not talk about. There's some we would, probably most. Yeah,
yeah,
probably most we wouldn't talk about. But Graham was really interesting because, he's been really interesting over the last decade because he was initially very opposed to Trump, very vocally opposed to Trump. And the thing about Lindsey Graham, and there are plenty of criticisms that can be levied at him, and there are plenty of jokes that have been made about him, but I think he is genuinely very bright or was very bright and very charming. Like, I think if he's agreeing with you, I think people tend to like him. So
did you disclose your bias?
What is my bias here?
He's a lawyer.
Oh, okay. So let me disclose some biases. He was a lawyer, and he was a longtime member of the Air Force JAG Corps. My father was a Navy JAG. So and Lindsey Graham is from the South. A lot of my family's from the South.
The connections run deep, as you guys can see. I mean,
the connections run deep. So
it's basically nepotism here.
Yeah. So anyway, but I do genuinely think, like, Graham, if he agrees with you, it's hard not to like him. And so there was this period, he'd been in the Senate for a long time, since 2002, I think. So he'd been in the Senate for a good while before Trump came around. And then when Trump initially came around, Graham was running for president at first. That campaign didn't go great, but running at first, and he got a lot of play on your standard liberal, i.e., trustworthy news shows, doing nice interviews, and he had a bunch of great quotes. Something about how if Trump gets nominated, if we nominate Trump, we're going to get crucified and we're going to deserve it. Something along those lines.
Yeah, and it'll be the end of the Republican Party.
End of the Republican Party.
Yeah, and so it seems like a Vance situation where he just completely turned over.
Not exactly. So that's actually a really interesting point, though. So maybe he is a lot like Vance.
So Vance was super negative too.
Vance was very negative, but Vance was not in politics yet. So we can draw just one potential distinction between them is that Vance is young, has not yet run for the Senate, and Graham has been in the Senate and is in his third term. But pretty quickly, Graham, in many respects, realigns himself with Trump and betrays the Democrats who never elected him. And so then now he's somehow accepted back into Trump's good graces and becomes a fairly big and articulate Trump proponent for the last however many years, while remaining, in many respects, I think, true to his original political beliefs. Like, he did not become less hawkish for having aligned himself with Trump, and I think has pushed the Trump administration to do certain more hawkish things than they might have done otherwise if, say, Vance were the only one in the room. I don't know that to be the case, but
yeah, he's certainly more interesting than I thought, because I did look at some of the things that he's done in the past. He was involved with the Bill Clinton impeachment.
What was his involvement with that?
So he was on the committee, and then there were, let's see here. I actually did
research.
Yeah.
Nice. Wow. All right.
So there was like 3 or 4 proposed articles, and he voted against one of them, which the Democrats were mad that he was trying to impeach the president, and then the Republicans were mad that he didn't completely vote for everything. And then there's like the hawkish stuff, like the Iraq War, and then apparently there was something called the Gang of 14 that was in 2005.
Immigration.
I don't remember that because I didn't know what politics was. in any capacity.
I don't.
It was
I
like,
was.
oh,
Yeah.
there's a Mormon running for president. That's cool. Yeah, and then there's a period of history where he was involved with the Guantanamo Bay stuff, and he did pass something that was increased the rights of the people that were there, and then he like passed a whole bunch of stuff that made everything worse, according to his opponents. And then immigration stuff, and then there's a brief moment where he was interested in climate change stuff. So like he's not like cut and dry like the worst politician ever, but
when you say worst, how would you define worst?
By worst, I guess what I mean is extreme. So
okay.
he's not the most extreme Republican. And
no, gosh, no.
Yeah, and so he's more nuanced. I just think the last 10 years have kind of shown who he is, maybe.
What do you mean by that?
I think just rallying behind Trump and doing what he wanted, and a lot less opposition to things until like after he lost the race, just kind of following his lead, where like he could have just maintained his opinion. And then the stuff with the hawkish stuff after that, including the Israel stuff, I felt was like pretty tone deaf. And I'm not going to claim to have a real opinion on Israel because it's such a complicated topic I just don't understand. But I feel like in a moment of time where like the American people were like, I don't really understand why we're spending all this money. And I can't remember the statement he made about Israel exactly, but it just seemed like he's always been a lot more interested in outside. I can't think of the word, just foreign policy. And I don't know. He gives me the icky kind of.
Oh, that's interesting. Coming in from the populist corner of the podcast.
I think, I think he's a very interesting person. I don't agree with a lot of the things that I don't agree with most politicians. Like I really don't. I don't know. I don't know. Have a great home for my political views and stuff because I have like I don't know.
You could do a comprehensive worldwide search and you find out that like your views best match up with like the Congolese Socialist Party.
Yeah, exactly. Something like that. Yeah, something like that. But like one thing that I can appreciate this to a degree for some reason, as much as I wouldn't do it, but like it to me, it showed the last 10 years showed that he was a politician. Like he was a true politician, and he wanted to be a part of those who wrote the story. So he changed his tune, when the winds of power shifted. He said he said
he starts rowing the other direction.
He starts rowing the other direction. And as distasteful as we want it may feel for a lot of people, and for me especially, I agree. But like at the same time, I think about it to myself and I'm like, if I have a real shot at affecting policy, being able to actually like make change, what am I willing to do, to be able to be at the table and to do things? Now, I don't have a very high threshold for that. That's why I'm not a politician. I don't have a very high threshold. But I actually, when I'm trying to put myself in their shoes, I actually kind of have a little more sympathy for him because he really stayed true to his core like beliefs. It's really different when someone like flips and like all of their things, switch. Like that's one thing. But I'm talking about like when you decide to ally with somebody that you really didn't like, but you still are pushing your agenda that you've really had, you've basically always had. I can respect that in ways. Yeah. I couldn't do it. I don't like it, But at the same time, I'm like, what do you guys expect? He's a good politician.
So few thoughts on that. First, as to him being a good politician, every election he's had in the Senate, he's won. I read like he's never had a serious challenge, and that includes significantly a few years back. Oh gosh, I'm gonna forget I think it might have been 2022. I want to say it was the 2022 or 2020. Yeah. Okay. The 2020 election. So Democrats are feeling optimistic. We're going to get Graham out. Here he is. He's this traitor. He does, one, he, all the, like the fun conversations he had with liberals, like that's out the window. Now he's totally allied with Trump. Trump is unpopular. We got COVID. Biden's about to win by a bunch. We're going to get Graham out of there. This is our chance to get him out of South Carolina. And Democrats were running Jamie Harrison, who was, raised $1 bajillion from Democrats across the country to run this campaign against Lindsey Graham. And for a while, you had people saying like, oh, I don't know, like this is getting close. And, maybe this district, like sure it leans Republican, but, things are looking good. Graham smoked him. He beat him. That was the closest election he's ever had. And he won by 10 percentage points, which in political terms is a lot. Like that's not close. That is not close. And then Democrats, it's kind of interesting, immediately made Jamie Harrison, who I'm sure is a lovely guy, chairman of the National Committee.
Well, interesting fact. Do you guys know
think his tenure went very well?
Do you guys know who was in before Graham?
Who? No, I don't. Oh, Strom Thurmond.
Yeah. Crazy.
Wow.
Strom Thurmond. He's a segregationist. He's
Thomas was.
Oh, yeah, I guess he did. He served in World War II. Like, it's crazy.
Strom Thurmond, he didn't just serve in World War II. He was kind of old in World War II. He was born in 1902 and he died in 2003.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, he's very old, and not a. Strom Thurmond's a separate topic. Interesting guy. He did. He was originally a Dixiecrat. Was elected to Congress as and fathered a child with his. Let's see. Yeah, he fathered a child with a black woman who had worked for Thurmond's parents and was 15 or 16 when she gave birth. So Thurmond would have been 21 or 22, I think, when that relationship was, I don't know if relationship's the right word, but when that act was consummated. Yes.
He also switched parties, which I think is always interesting.
We're talking about Thurmond?
Yeah.
He
was Democrat, switched to a Republican. Because
1964? Yeah, I was going to say, the South got quite a, yeah. Democratic Party lost a lot of votes in the South when they switched, when they became less racist. It was, lost a lot of people. Anyway, Strom Thurmond served the great state of South Carolina for a very long time, and then was replaced by Lindsey Graham. So South Carolina, in that,
it's only had two.
They have been
crazy.
represented by Lindsey Graham or Strom Thurmond since 1948.
Yeah, is that healthy? Like, would you consider that healthy democracy, or like, or considered like Orrin Hatch? Is this like, is that a bad sign, or like, is that just an outlier that happens every once in a while, and that's just a natural course?
I think it's an outlier that happens every dozen or 30 times in a while.
Yeah.
Channing, what were you going to say on that?
No, I was going to say it's not like a failure of the system. I actually think it's more of almost a failure on like the people. just because, and maybe not. I mean, if that person truly represents your beliefs and goals, I mean, people keep, I mean, that's the system at work, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your viewpoint. But it shouldn't happen regularly. I don't think.
I would argue. So it's interesting. I had a fellow on this podcast, very nice guy, professor at George Washington University, who wrote a book with a
I
bunch
literally
of.
thought you were saying Professor George Washington, and I was like, who in the
I
world?
had George Washington on the podcast. No, so I had a professor at GW come on the podcast. He's written a book. Well, a book. He's compiled a book written by a number of people about different parts of the government. It's like basically a fun introduction to civics, with fun little chapters helping people understand little understood topics. The thing is, everyone wants term limits, and he was arguing that you don't like these are difficult jobs, and term limits, they seem like a good idea, but all you'd end up with is new people constantly, and people learn the system, and people get more effective the longer they spend in Congress, and so we shouldn't have them. And I left thinking, and I still think he's wrong. I think we should have term limits, and that it doesn't have to be like one term, but 3 terms and it doesn't even have to be 2 terms, maybe 3 terms in the Senate. That's an awfully long time. 18 years if people really like their senator. Call it 4 or 5 terms in the House, something like that. These are very long periods when people can be in politics. But I think no, it is not good that people are able to serve forever. Serve being an interesting verb, but not entirely appropriate.
What about his
well,
what about his sister filling in for him after too?
That
seems absolutely incredible to me.
Let's get to that in a second. I'm actually not as surprised by that, but let's get to that in 1 second. I'll have to look at her qualifications, but
she's the sister of Lindsey Graham. Qualifications over.
Yeah,
according to Reddit's conspiracy theories, she has the same blackmail that her brother had. So,
interesting. Okay, we'll get to that in a minute too. But no, currently, look at the Senate. So Lindsey Graham died. He's 71. Ostensibly healthy. Working very hard. So he's not at an age where we would say no, we can't have a person like that in Congress. And people do. People die at random ages. It happens. But there are a lot of people who die while serving in Congress where it's like, you know what? Not surprising. Not surprising. Mitch McConnell just back after a mysterious stay in the hospital. Very old. He's been having all sorts of health problems. Probably should not be in the U.S. Senate. Chuck Grassley, totally fine somehow, but in his 90s. If he, went back to the farm for the weekend and didn't come back, it medically would not be a surprise. Probably a little old. I don't know if he should still be in the Senate. And you'd lose, and again, you'd lose people that I think a lot of people would like and think are vigorous. Chuck Grassley on the Republican side, Bernie Sanders on the Democratic side. Mm-hmm. Bernie, very energetic, old as sin. He's so old.
Yeah. It's like a retirement home. Honestly, all respect to retirement homes.
I mean,
I hate to make the comparison to that, but yeah, it just seems like they're holding on to power for a little too long.
It's
some young blood in there.
It's interesting. So there are obviously, between the House and the Senate, there are 535 people in Congress at all times, give or take a couple, depending on whether someone dies and you need to fill a seat. It's funny how often, this isn't like a weekly or a monthly thing, but I feel like it happens a couple of times a year, where I get a notification from the New York Times, and it's that someone has died, and it's someone I haven't even heard of. And I would not say, this is ironic given the subject of the podcast, would say I pay relatively close attention to politics, but not close enough that I could name all 435 members of the House. It's funny how often it'll be, this guy from New Jersey, he passed away. Like, he'd been in the House for 6 terms. He was 86. And I think we should have term limits, and I would listen to people on age limits. Although I think I'm a little more
I mean, I don't think I've ever heard you actually say an opinion like that before.
Oh yeah.
Usually it's very like, oh yeah, well, the world's complicated, and you know,
no,
I need to like think everyone's good and stuff.
No, on this one, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know that you need strict age limits, but I think term limits might be a good idea.
Let's start with something that can actually, pass. I think the age limit would be hard.
Now, ironically, of course, very difficult to pass term limits because you need the people subject to the term limits to pass the legislation.
Yes. Yeah.
Which is
tough. Who's watching the watchers?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Maybe he'll step in.
Just saying. Hey, maybe not in this life.
But back to yeah.
I mean, if you see Trump tweets, I mean, maybe he's already in charge.
There you go. Gosh, I had a good point about Lindsey Graham. Oh, Thomas, you brought up the blackmail, which I think is interesting.
No, there's nothing.
About his sister.
Yeah,
I was gonna say about Graham,
people just say stuff. But I mean, the blackmail on Graham is about his potential for being gay.
Yeah,
and
he's single. He's never married.
Some people have come out and said that they were involved with him at different points, and it's one of those situations of like, is this person being legitimate, or are they clout chasing? So I'm not convinced either way.
Well, and I don't think it. I mean, it doesn't matter. In a lot of ways,
it only matters because he lies about it.
Sure,
that would be, but what politician isn't doing some of that? So it matters way less to me.
I would say generally, I think let me put this to a couple of ways. If he was gay, there are certainly a lot of people on the left, including, I would imagine, a high percentage of gay men and other other members of the LGBTQ community, who would say that they disagreed strongly with the way he voted, and that he did not vote in a way helpful to the gay community.
Mm-hmm.
Say that. And beyond that, I don't know that I really have any thoughts about it or care.
Spoken as a cis white male, privileged.
Yeah.
You're the problem in the Democratic Party, to be honest.
Yeah, it could be. It's there's always that possibility. But by the way, I like the idea of Lindsey Graham in the afterlife listening to this episode. What the heck?
Top tier listening.
Yeah, top tier listening.
Our boy Graham.
No, but I wanted to go back to Channing's point, what he was saying about kind of the chameleonic sacrifices you make to be in the room. So, and how Graham did not shift. That's
a nice word, by the way.
Chameleonic.
Yeah, I've never heard that. That sounds like a Shakespeare word you just like make up, but it makes sense.
Well, I think it's like unto a chameleon.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Anyway, it makes sense,
Right.
But it's cool.
Thanks, appreciate it. Yes. Anyway, so but we talked about how he was only chameleonic to an extent, where he kind of stayed true to his core principle, which was being a hawk, and on most other stuff seemed to be pretty flexible, and was ironically, this is, I think, where he really alienated himself from a lot of National Democrats. Also, note that in the wake of him dying, it seems like his colleagues really liked him, including the Democrats. Like, I think Lindsey Graham among Congress people was probably the upper tier as far as quality of hang. Like, I bet Lindsey Graham would be a fun guy to have a dinner with.
I was actually that was gonna be one of my things I wanted to say at the end about him.
It'd be a fun hang.
Was that it seems like a lot of people have come out on all sides, and been like, tributes. It's honestly one of the most outpouring I've seen in a long time, kind of these higher levels. But something that many people have stated is that he was brilliant at being able to have a personal relationship, even if your working relationship was slightly contentious, and he could be able to keep those two things twain. And so he was like, if we can be friends, we can be friends, we can talk, we can be around each other, and it's okay that we both passionately fight for different things because you believe that, I believe this. And I can appreciate that. And I think it is a testament just a little bit about what I kind of wish I saw more of is the fact of, no one's perfect. I'm not saying I really like the man and I think he's a great man or anything like that, because I don't know enough to be able to give like a thing on that. But I personally am impressed by the fact that so many people, did come out and say these things about him and had true respect for him. And yet we looked at him and be like, oh, he did have a huge shift from Trump and stuff. We look at all these things and point at these things, but at the end of the day, he was an impactful person, and people can be impactful and respectful towards each other. And it's just times like this that give me a little bit of hope, that like, hey, we can find people can find a way to be able to passionately, advocate, vote, and try to push towards a certain direction, and yet still work with peers. So I don't know. It's just I had no
here's
idea.
A question. What conditions do you think need to be present for that to happen? Because in Lindsey Graham, we have a very smart, incredibly charming Southern lawyer.
Bias.
Yeah, bias. Dang. I personally doubt that guys like
Mike Lee.
I was going to say Mike Lee. I was trying to, for the sake of non-bias, trying to think of a liberal, and it's like there are plenty, but Mike Lee was, he's a senator of our state, and I don't know if he's as good a hang. Like if he passed away, I would, maybe it would turn out like he had very close relationships with a bunch of Democrats, but I would be more surprised by that than because the thing is, the outpouring with respect to Lindsey Graham to me is not surprising. It's like I feel like I knew people liked him. I have watched congressional hearings very rarely, but it's kind of clear in them when he's involved, people do like him. Whereas I think that's less clear for some of the other. Well, and it's ironic because that was clear. People really liked him, even though he was obviously, in certain respects, many respects, power hungry. Like the guy, he did shift a lot of things, and risk offending bajillions of people to maintain his power.
I think that's the American way. I feel like Americans respect that type of thing, or at least they historically have.
They respect. Wait, what do you mean?
They respect people that work hard and get what they want, and like
winners.
Like pull yourself up by the bootstraps. Like this is what I want. I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna get it. And
if I have to eat some crap along the way, I'll do it.
Yeah, I feel like Americans vibe with that, or they historically.
That's interesting. I think with politicians, I'm not I'm not sure I agree with that.
Oh, definitely not in the last, I don't know,
I
10,
think with
10, 15 years.
I think most politicians. I'm trying to think about. I guess a lot of politicians see Trump's an interesting character because he comes along and all of a sudden a lot of people do shift pretty immediately. A lot of Republicans who came in with the Tea Party are like, well, if he wants to spend, you know, let's spend. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't have a coherent
I
response to
think you
that.
all also have to realize a little bit. Trump was a unique situation. Trump was clearly a situation where it was join the team or get burned. Like it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
very like overt.
Well, one of my favorite things of the Trump era has been when Republicans, having towed the line for however long, lose, except maybe because he endorsed their primary opponent. Maybe they offended them at one point with a vote or some interview they did on Jimmy Kimmel or whatever, and he's like, you're out, and someone comes in and replaces him, and then during the lame duck period after they lose their primary, they're like, I hate that guy. There's been and all of a sudden they get this this courage, and they start there's this moment where they're gonna speak uh freely and all that. It's like, I don't know if you really get all that much credit for doing that when there's no cost to you personally.
Hey,
I have a
can I just do a really short answer to your question you asked me and then immediately blew past, which was how does that happen where people act, like people, in politics, how do you have more?
Thank you. Oh yeah. Thank you for restating it because I forgot the question. Go ahead.
Yeah, no worries. I think at the end of the day, you have to. I'm sure I don't know this person, right? I've never dealt with him, but I am sure that people liked him because they were able to relate with him in some way, or he was able to relate with them, and that is by knowing another person, whether you agree with them or not. And I feel like that is something that's kind of what needs to exist. Is people can really disagree with each other, but if a person, like for instance, me and Thomas can probably have a conversation about the Supreme Court because it sounds like Thomas has some views that I might have some pretty different ones. And the thing is we can have a discourse about it, and how we both approach it is that, like, if I honestly listen to him and I understand where he's coming from, and Thomas can tell that I'm trying to understand where he's coming from, but we still disagree, that lightens the tension of it, right? Because if you're both trying to understand each other where you're coming from, and the other person can see that, like you can see each other trying to see where the other person's coming from, there's a respect that's built, and so even though you may fight for different sides because you're like, you know what, I respect you, I'm trying to understand where you're coming from, I'm kind of following it, but I don't agree with you. You can still look at that person and go, they're at least fighting for what they think is right. And at the end of the day, you can respect that, right? It's when you start believing that someone else doesn't have good intentions, when other people don't care, like other things like that. That's when, like, it doesn't matter what they do, you just don't like them. And
I think that's right. And can I add something to it?
Absolutely.
So, my day job, I'm an attorney, and I have, yeah, much like Lindsey Graham, and I have been, in a lot of situations where you're trying to negotiate a deal. You're trying to get deals done. Some people are very easy to negotiate with, get a deal done with, and because you're both clearly angling for a solution that works for all involved, where it's like, okay, you don't have all that money to give it right now, but you might if we stretch this out, and we don't need this right now, but if you give us this, then we can get it done. And so you can end up with settlement agreements that look more complicated, but everyone is much happier with, and you can get it done faster than if participants are hard line on a particular issue that the other side also can't give on.
Well, let me ask a question about that.
Yeah.
Are the best lawyers the ones that push for one side and win, or are the best lawyers the ones that compromise?
So that's a very good question, and it's difficult to say because you don't get deals done in a vacuum. So like the lawyers who push hard for one side and win, we don't know what they would have gotten if they had, sought something that's more of a compromise. And often with compromises, you're not compromising on anything you really care about. You're giving on stuff you don't care about while getting more on stuff that the other side turns out not to care as much about. And then the flip side, when you do have people who just make deals and get them done more comfortably and quickly, you don't know what you would have ended up with had you really pushed hard and played chicken with the other side. So I don't really know, but I can say that based on my experience, and it is an experience I believe in pretty wholly, and it informs a lot of my political views too, that when you are deal oriented and willing, compromise isn't the right word necessarily. You're willing to be flexible, and you're willing to constantly, you're curious about what the other side really wants. You're curious about what you really want, about what your clients really want, but which can be a moving target. But you're always looking to get to a solution. One, you get things done much faster. It's often much, much faster. And it's much more pleasant. And I think that pleasantness is a substantive win because, for one, with lawyers, this is where it's like not necessarily just about one client, but it's
unless you're getting paid by the hour, right? Because
it's all billable, baby.
You believe it or not, still much more fun to get deals done quickly because lawyers, we do get, a lot of us do get paid by the hour, but we also hate risk. And when clients just want to fight, you take on a lot more risk. So maybe you get paid more along the way, but my gosh, is it more stressful? And so it's, you'd rather just have, you'd get deals done quickly and be able to represent
brief, consistent wins.
Yeah. And be able to represent more clients. And I think, I've seen that approach work enough times now that I really believe in it. And I think that's one thing I would say for Lindsey Graham. I think he was, by disposition, a pretty flexible dude, because I think he had very few things he was a genuine kind of hardliner about. And on most stuff, he's like, kind of ballparking it. And he has some general principles, but there's a lot of wiggle room, which I think probably endeared him to a lot of colleagues who were on the opposite side of the aisle, who were likely looking to him often as a potential, Republican vote on something, or as a messenger who could take what they're doing and take it to other Republicans. It's like, what do we need to change here that can make this palatable to enough people to get it done?
I think, again, that comes back to the understanding where someone else is coming from, right? Because if you're looking across the aisle, and you see someone that you know is hearing you, and you're like, I know he's gonna hear what I say, and he doesn't have to agree with it, but he's he knows what I want. Then you feel a lot more comfortable with that person, because that you can something could happen. It's not just at an impasse, right? Where it doesn't matter what I say, this other side is not listening, right? So I might as well just hold my ground and grind them out. So you have two teams just grinding each other out instead of.
Sounded interesting.
Yeah, true. But just trying to just outlast each other. But you could have an honest conversation of okay, fine, whatever, guys. I know it's late.
Sorry.
Bring her home. No, but I think that's why, if you feel like someone else is listening to you on the other side, it becomes a lot easier to have passionate discourse where you share honest feelings and stuff, and you fight for what you want. But it's amazing how things tend to kind of happen, because maybe you don't, like you said, you don't feel as strongly as this other person.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, hey, I could give this. And then if they understand me and I really feel strongly about this, like,
They'll give me that.
next time, like we can, and that just builds, I don't know.
Yeah, no,
Well,
I think you're absolutely, sorry, Mabes, go ahead, but I think you're absolutely right.
I mean, I'd like to end this on a negative note.
Because this is getting pretty positive.
Yeah. I think when religion gets involved, it kind of ruins that for me. Like when there's like value judgments placed on it. So like Christian nationalism right now, where it's like, I feel like there's no room to agree with the other person if they're saying like your policies are evil. And there's less of like a mutual understanding there. If they were actual Christians, in my opinion, I think it could work because they'd have their opinion and be able to have some like actual brain cells about things. But the way it is right now, it just is so. Some people that prescribe to that Christian nationalism type of view just make it hard to meet in the middle.
So I think there's a lot in what you just said that I agree with, but I'm going to make it a little broader because I think it's not. Because I think what you're talking.
Thanks for
about,
like smoothing this over for me.
Yeah, no, I think it is easier to be flexible when you don't assign absolute moral value to particular policy judgments. And that is, often those absolute moral values are coming from religion. Sometimes they are not. You certainly see those from people who are openly irreligious, for example. And because once something has a particular policy, not just an outcome or something, has like an absolute moral value, the debate's done. You just can't, like, it becomes one of those immovable things where you flat out can't, like, you can't, not just you can't negotiate, you really can't engage. And
I mean, abortion's the easiest example.
That is a very easy example. And can I say
if you think abortion's murder, like, I totally support you in fighting that. It's true. And it's true that like I'm really appreciative that you specified that, because it is true that like everyone has these like moral things that they're really pushing for, but like the left is.
So
I think
abortion's a very good example. Can I just say this really quickly, Jane?
Yeah.
Just, with abortion in particular. Sorry, I've been talking a lot. It's my podcast. Sorry.
Wow. All right.
Sorry.
Shit. We should change this from the three neophytes to Nick and his two dumb friends.
Later.
Nick and friends. No, I was just going to say really quickly, one of the most eye-opening things for me leaving Utah, where I think, it's generally more religious, and we probably know more people who have strong feelings against abortion than the other way. And moving to New York, first Virginia and then New York, and being very good friends with people who had equally intense moral feelings going the other way, where it was a women's rights issue and people who didn't get it or believe the opposite were committing like a moral violation of approximately the same import and were equally unwilling to debate it. It was really interesting. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead, Cheney.
No, so I was actually, before Thomas brought up abortion, I was actually going to bring it up because I was then going to say, because Thomas actually brought it home of, then there are things where I also agree that people can have religious views that make things a right or wrong, right? Like it's like if we at a certain point, often in religion, there's a line that gets drawn somewhere, and people, pretty much everyone draws a line somewhere for the most part. People who less ascribe to religion or something like that might have a little bit more flexibility in their lines they draw, but everyone kind of draws lines somewhere. Like everyone at the end of the day has certain lines where they're like, that's right or wrong. But
like most Republicans think that women should be able to get an education, for example.
You said shouldn't?
Where should.
Oh.
Whereas in some other majority religions, like take it Afghanistan, for example.
Oh, sure.
Like that's a line that most people draw, but Afghanistan's like, maybe they shouldn't have an education.
Yeah, absolutely. And the line is different for everybody.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to state was, for me, so something on like abortion, right? I have very strong feelings about it, and a lot of those do stem from my religious beliefs, but they have also become a part of what I truly feel, right? Like what I feel is right, or wrong. But I think what it comes back to is if I'm sitting across from somebody that has the same the same fervor of feelings but the opposite of what I am, I think the best thing that can happen is for us to talk about it, right? Like, and to understand why the other one holds it so firmly.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we talk about it and I know why you hold it and I've shared why, and we just try to understand the other one, we can still be on opposite sides, hold as strong as we can. But if I have the belief that the other person is trying to do their best, that changes, and they believe that I'm trying to do my best, whether they think my choice is wrong, like it is wrong, that changes the tone of everything. Like it doesn't become hate filled, like you are evil, you're bad. It goes, I so strongly disagree with you, right? Like I so passionately disagree with you, but like I know you're trying to do your best, which is just a different tone.
Yeah.
And that is what I think misses in politics in just a regular day. I've been called naive because I talk
Facts.
about politics and people in a lot of ways, but people are like, that whatever they're advocating for is evil. And I'm like, well, I disagree with that. I disagree with what they're advocating for, but I don't think that person is evil because they're advocating for it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know them well enough to know why are they advocating for that, right? What's in their life that's that shaped their perspective to do this, because I know what's in my life that shaped my perspective. And so I want to assume, and I truly continue to assume that a lot of the things that people advocate for, I'm like, just because I think that choice is wrong doesn't mean I think that's a bad person. I don't know what has shaped it. And so by having that belief, it allows me to feel like I can talk to people more and be like, hey, why do you advocate for that? Like, I honestly want to know. Like,
this is straight up. You gave I think a beautiful explanation of really what this podcast is about. Like that's actually and the newsletter. Like that is actually the point. The point is curiosity, not just about other people, but about yourself. It's understanding. My grandfather, dear departed grandfather, used to say, "A man's perception is reality." And to your point, like when people support things that we don't agree with, there's typically a reason for that. That isn't they wake up in the morning feeling evil and desiring evil. It's typically the opposite of that, and you just have to figure out what it is in their experience, that led them to a particular judgment. And I would add a couple of things. One, I think, and this is bringing in Thomas and his background and present in psychology, but I think a lot of us don't understand why we hold certain viewpoints. Maybe the more self-aware of us can track through and identify, like on certain points, like why we might hold a certain view. Abortion can be an obvious one. If it's coming out of a religious belief or something like that, and you can track that. That's kind of 1 + 1 = 2. But there's a lot of stuff where your initial taxes, yeah, or many other even more clearly moral issues than taxes, where your initial bias might not be something you can consciously explain. You just have this initial bias, and and that's born of decades of experiences, and you don't know which ones apply to it and whatnot.
For example, some people think it's okay to stay in the passing lane, and other people think
I think we can pass judgment on those people. Yeah. Sometimes you just look at something and you say that's evil, and you just know it when you see it.
You just know there are certain lines that can and should be drawn and remain there in the sand. Speaking of lines, the line that separates the passing lane from the anyway. I was also going to say that in politics, everywhere, but in politics, we have means and we have ends. So let's say that our desired end, we're just going to stick on abortion. We're going to say our desired end is fewer abortions. That is a desired end that many people could agree on. There are many means to that desired end. For some, what they want is, this firm national ban on abortion and severe punishments for doctors, maybe women, and all this sort of stuff. And then there are others who would, not support any of that, but would support, greater access to contraceptives and more comprehensive sex education and better support for expectant mothers. So those who are making such a decision for economic reasons might be less inclined to do so, yada, yada, yada down the line. Different means to ends that are in a similar place. And I think when we have a moral judgment about an end, that is less, that is less likely to inhibit discussion and debate than moral judgments about political means. Oh gosh, this is getting more complicated. This is like a big, because when I'm thinking of means, I think we should have moral judgments about means as far as like the way we engage with other people. And I think many of our norms and social mores have been violated more than average over the last 10 years. And I think it's a mistake. I think the way we discourse with each other, I think it really matters. But anyway,
my blood sugar is just not allowing me to follow this conversation.
Sorry. Gosh, I'm sorry. So basically, I personally do not have very many lines, like political lines in the sand, about specific laws or whatever. I have, which I'm going to call the means to ends. I do have stronger views on certain ends as to what I hope the laws will do. Very open to suggestions as to different ways to get to the same place. Like for example, let's say I have a particular, or let's say that I believe that we should be making it easier for 8th graders to read or something like that, and I might have a preliminary view about a policy that will help that happen. If you come along and you have a different policy that you convince me is going to get you to the same place better, like I'm going to jump on your policy. And that's why, like, I'm a liberal, but I'm subject to, if a conservative came along and was really able to talk me into the policies of the Republican Party, getting the American people to a place I would like them to go, and they had some politicians that I didn't, strongly dislike, then I'd, maybe be willing to jump over. I don't have a moral connection to the Democratic Party necessarily.
Wait, so are you saying like all roads lead to my political opinion?
No.
But you support all roads that lead to your end goal.
Kind of. Like, let's say if my goal is to get to Rome and I'm on a particular road, but you show me another road is going to get there faster.
Right. Yeah.
Then I'm going to check out the other road. And on on certain issues, it might be easier to talk me into the other road. On other issues, it might be harder because
and what he's saying is right now most of the roads are built by Democrats that get him where he wants to go. But he could be convinced to take a road that might be
it could be
and designed by a Republican if it gets him to where he wants to go faster or better.
That's exactly
That's
right.
what he's saying.
I'm on a road right now with Democrats that I don't think is a great road. It's a road, and I'm on the road and driving along, and the other drivers on the road. Yeah, okay, I'm not loving my experience. And there are Republicans saying you should come over on this other road, and I look at their road. I just think it's a worse road, and I don't love the bus driver. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. How far we can take the metaphor, but yeah,
I'll go as far as say like I think I'm probably just like the flip flop of you, where where I'm on mostly Republican roads.
Yeah.
Definitely don't like it over there.
Thomas, we could get him.
I don't not a huge fan of it.
Yeah.
But like you, I have ends that I think, unfortunately, that just enough of the roads on this one side go farther over than I think the other. I actually think that most of the roads go to places I don't want to go on both sides. But anyway, so I completely understand what you're saying, because I have a lot of the same thing of like there are things that I want to have happen, and if someone's like, hey, here's a path, and I'm like, that's a great path, and someone's like, it's headed by a Democrat, and I'm like, I think that's a great idea.
It's a good path.
Like, that's a great idea. But I agree with you that I think I also just want to state for that my personal belief is it's okay to have deeply held religious beliefs. Like, that's my personal belief, is that you can have very deeply held religious beliefs, and you can still be an excellent person in politics. Like, and when I say excellent, I mean someone that genuinely tries to care about other people, someone that people recognize that you do your best. And, there are people who are very earnest that people don't like. Like, I get that and stuff, but like, just care about the other side. And I think that actually just goes an incredibly long way. Like, I think that goes an incredibly long way. There's obviously other factors, but
there have been many, I think, effective and deeply beloved by colleagues, Congress people of both in all parties, who have had deeply held religious beliefs and have nonetheless, that has not been a barrier to them serving effectively or being well liked and being a contributing member of whatever. I think where we run into frustration is like where people take their personal moral beliefs and then they take what is a limited structure. Because a lot of, I only speaking from our more or less shared experience in religion, there is some stuff that religion speaks to with some specificity, and a lot of stuff it really doesn't. It really doesn't. And
like
so
caffeine.
I was thinking more like, like sales tax, like all these.
That's what I was about to say. I was about to say taxes. That's actually
render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's, guys.
I have always been
Stop
impressed
talking
by
about
the
pizza.
number of times that I have heard people somehow tie a religious point to that, and I can get it to a small degree, but to have an unwavering like views on, like, I don't know, it's interesting to me, because I think we should just be really careful what we ascribe to
I
our
think
religious views.
Yeah, like you really, I do really believe that. Like, you want to, part of the reason you want to interrogate your own beliefs with some, not in a negative way, but with some regularity, is that you want to keep your absolutes because they're absolutes, you want to keep them to the smallest,
to the absolute minimum.
You want to keep them to the minimum. That doesn't mean
I saw what you did there.
That doesn't mean that they need to be gone or minimal, but it does mean they shouldn't expand beyond that which they actually support. Gosh, I had another one. But yeah, like there's a, it's always interesting. Like, there's not a lot in the New Testament that I've read. I've read Old Testament and New Testament, multiple times and in multiple languages, there is not a lot about like red flag gun laws. Like you should not have a religious view about that. You can have a strong view, but it should not,
Well, no,
now
see,
we're getting into theology.
yeah,
And
see, I'm really trying not to be negative here at the end, just to respect your wishes. But I just think it's when things are brought to the extreme, and also I feel like just morals are so easily complicated, like, and varied, that if we say that it's okay to have a moral opinion, then we have to accept. There's a point that we say no to some things, but like that line is different for everyone, and so it's just complicated. Like I see both sides, and I just wish there was less emphasis on, like, because Channing might say that his some of his opinions are like Christian based or whatever based.
Ironically, Hindu.
Yeah, but there are other, but like there are other people that have a more extreme view of Christianity than you do.
For
that
sure.
will make me like say, man, like people that believe in Christ like should not be in charge because they want to do XYZ, when like the reality is most people aren't like that, but it feels like it's just used as a weapon in the same way that like leftists can use like like identity politics, for example, that are like people that are very, very passionate about that for good reasons or even bad reasons. I don't care. Those intense moral beliefs can be used as a weapon, and that makes me uncomfortable.
Intense moral beliefs are hard. And so to the extent that you're listening to this and you have intense moral beliefs, just be careful or try to cabin your intense moral beliefs to that which they truly affect or govern, or whatever it is. And then second, I think, is as far as speaking to America, it's kind of the risk and benefit of living in a democracy where everyone gets to vote, is that you can, that and in a country that allows freedom of religion, freedom of thought, freedom of speech, freedom of all these wonderful things, you can have really intense moral beliefs. They only become law if you can convince a lot of other people to back those same intense moral beliefs or vote for your law for their own other reasons.
Depending if the system is working
as
intended.
Sure. And the legal rule is basically that you're not going to, this is, I'm stating it terribly and I haven't thought about this in a long time, but basically you're not going to have religious discrimination or discrimination on, minority viewpoints from, you're not going to have religious discrimination from generally applicable laws. So like, polygamists probably don't love laws banning polygamy, but it's not that's not a law that's only enforced on polygamists. It's enforced on everybody. And so you can do that and you can prevent people from legally abiding by their deeply held religious beliefs. Just kind of a side note. So the positive thing about Lindsey Graham. No. Lindsey Graham, I think where we're getting to is complicated legacy. Virtually everyone could find something in Lindsey Graham with which they disagree, probably strongly, because he took he took a number of different political stances, switched viewpoints a lot of times, at varying times opposed President Trump vociferously, and then backed him beyond what other Republican senators were doing. Like he was pretty involved in the 2020 election stuff. He's done a lot of stuff that would make Like, you go through, and virtually everyone is going to find something that's going to make them mad. But and then right now, given I think the kind of isolationist and dovish tilt of the American people writ large in this rather populist time, a lot of people are going to disagree with his hawkishness, his support of Israel, and support for wars in the Middle East. I think more people agree with his support for the war in Ukraine, or for us supporting Ukraine in the war against Russia. But I think we should remember the kind of practical takeaway, I think, for us as members of the American citizenry is that he was very well liked by his colleagues, and it's for reasons that I think we can, to some degree, and should to some degree, replicate. And I think Channing, I think, probably made the points best, but it's really about remaining curious, sincerely curious about other people, and not assuming the worst, not assuming that because they hold views opposite to your own, they must be of and desirous of evil. And yeah, either of you have any positive closing thoughts?
I really like the oh my gosh, Ted Lasso, where, you know, the saying, you know, just kind of be curious, you know, the bar scene, you know, where, you know, it's just a ridiculous
linked
show,
it
but it's
in
great.
at least 2 articles. I love that scene.
I do think, though, that it is really important that even with dealing with people you really don't like, one of the reasons I like that scene also a lot is because, you know, they don't like each other, you know, kind of a thing. No. But like, even if you don't like people, you can be curious, because if you truly want to like just learn, it's amazing the things that you can learn from people you don't even like, you know? And if nothing else, you can learn things that support your idea even more. Like, don't think that being curious means you have to, like, you're only going to learn things that are like trying to, like, you know, tear down your views and stuff. There will be things you learn that are like strengthen you're like, I'm feeling more and more better about this. But also, I am impressed by how much my views have changed. Like, my religious views haven't changed at all, you know, since, you know, from being, but like, I have changed so much in how I approach things, because I've just learned, you know, like, things, and been like, you know, I never thought about that. I never thought about, you know, from this side or whatever. And I don't know, be curious, because you'll be surprised at what you'll learn if you just ask the question. So,
Thomas.
Amen.
To say we like to close with our most positive, the most positive neophyte. Be curious. Doesn't get any better than that. All right, and that was the interview. Thank you very much for listening. If you wouldn't mind, please do leave a review for the podcast. I believe those are important. And subscribe to the newsletter, which will be linked in the show notes, or can be found at neverclosetheinquiry.substack.com. Thanks.